3 weeks. We're less than 3 weeks away from Election Day. November 5th will be here in only 19 days. What does that mean for the average American citizen? Well, I'm going to tell you what it means. What that means is we're about to have a very new president running the United States of America. It might be the former president, Donald J. Trump, or it could possibly be the current vice president, Kamala Harris. How are things looking for both of the candidates? Both of the candidates have been out on the campaign trail. Of course, Donald Trump been on the trail for much longer than Kamala Harris because her campaign was just announced after current President Joe Biden had dropped out of the race. So what does that mean? She had less time to actually hit the stump. Now, has she been using her time wisely? That's a big question. Many say that Vice President Harris has not been using the time that she have available in the best way possible. Many say that she has been ducking and dodging the press, that she's been giving canned speeches as well as canned interviews. What has that done for her campaign? Well, you see the title. There has been a great Black exodus that's been going on with the Democratic Party. There have been many Black men in particular, as well as Black women, that has been abandoning the Democratic Party. Has the Democrats noticed? Can Kamala Harris feel the pinch? I believe so. I believe that that's the reason why Vice President Harris has now come up with a plan to target Black Americans. In particular, she called it her plan for Black men. She has been on the campaign stump over the last few days, giving out policies that's supposed to be addressed directly to Black men. Will these policies work? Do Black men actually believe her? Do any Americans believe that she's actually putting together a plan that's going to help Black Americans? That's the question. I believe the answer is quite simple. The answer is reflective in the polls that we're seeing. Right now, what was considered to be a very tight race has been loosening up really quickly. We've been seeing numbers drop over the past few days. They have been dropping drastically, but in whose favor? Have they been dropping in the favor of Kamala Harris, or do Donald Trump benefit from the decrease in numbers that we've been seeing? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Right now, the trending news is an interview that Vice President Harris just did yesterday with Charlemagne the God from the Breakfast Club. Now, in this interview, it was a sort of a town hall style interview. But the weird thing is, because she was in front of Black Americans, I'm going to say that again. What I noticed is because she was in front of Black Americans, what I would call what appears to be an unsafe zone, what happened was the audience, they was caged off. They was behind a glass. Now, when she went on Oprah, that wasn't the same thing. When she talked to Hispanic Americans, it was open to all. But when she went in front of Black Americans, it was caged off. And when the participants of the town hall wanted to ask a question, there was a few that was cherry picked, that was hand picked, that was able to position those questions directly to Vice President Harris. They were, I believe, well, I think there was only one. It was a pastor that was able to come into the room and speak on the microphone to Vice President Harris. But everyone else, they had to speak through an audio system. I think that was an insult. Kamala Harris' campaign to Black Americans is failing. and it's failing drastically. Her approach to try to win over the black vote is is actually proven to be the worst in U.S. history. She claimed, well, I won't say she's claimed, but she is a black woman. I know a lot of people say that she's not black. I don't pretty much subscribe to that. She is a black woman. I look at her skin tone. She's a black woman. She have a black father, but she's not comfortable, as it appeared on the Charlemagne God interview. She's not comfortable around black people. Why do I say that? I say she's not comfortable around black people because she had to have those black people behind a glass wall, but when she's in front of Hispanics, there's no glass wall. When she's in front of a mixed crowd, whites, blacks, and others, or when she's on the Oprah interview, there's no glass wall. Why is it that we as black Americans have to be put in the cage to talk to the vice president? That's very troubling. That's a question that everyone should be asking. While she was in the interview with Charlemagne the God, as always, she danced around questions. She was asked one of the biggest questions that's concerning to black Americans was reparations. I know a lot of people don't agree on reparations. Some people is going to present the argument that they never had slaves, they never owned slaves, and they didn't benefit from the slave trade. I understand that argument. When you're looking at a situation, you have to be willing to look at both viewpoints. You got to be willing to look at opposing viewpoints. I can look at the viewpoint of many white Americans who position themselves to say, I was not around. Then I'm able to look at the viewpoint of black Americans that says that historically blacks was disproportionate by slavery. Thus, we were cut off from a lot of the American benefits. We were affected because we were not able to garner or receive generational wealth because of the stains of slavery, and many white Americans were able to receive generational wealth because of their ancestors owning slaves. So I'm able to look at both viewpoints. With that being put aside, what I think is important now is, what are we going to do about it? Do black people deserve reparations? Should there be a council put up to examine the studies of reparation? That was the question that was posed to Vice President Harris. Vice President Harris, she danced around that question. Many black Americans will say, we shouldn't ask Vice President Harris that question. They said that through the Obama campaign as well. People won't vote for her if she stand up for black people. People will vote for her if she stand up for the LGBTQ community. People will vote for her if she stand up for Israel. People will vote for her if she states her stance on Ukraine. People will vote for her if she take a position on women's rights. Many of the people that's making these claims, they also claim that the Democratic Party is a party that possesses no racism. They possesses no discrimination. But at the same time, you're telling me that we're not able to position ourselves and make demands because others won't vote for her because she made those demands for the black community. So it's either one or the other. Either you're saying that the Democratic Party is the post-racial party, that they don't possess any racial biases, or you're saying that she can't ask that question because the Democratic Party would not elect her. It's either one or the other. It can't be both ways. So with that being said, is this a situation where black American needs cannot be met? If reparation is important to black Americans, whether other Americans agree with it or not, black Americans should be able to state their position and present their argument. Other Americans who don't agree with that, they're welcome to present their arguments. That's how you resolve situations. Both parties or both groups, opposing groups, should all be able to present their arguments. And at the end, we should be able to come to a consensus. How does that consensus look? No one knows. No one knows because Kamala Harris, she refused to answer that question. She danced around that question. Many Black Americans defend her on that because they say that shouldn't be a question that she should be asked. She shouldn't be challenged with issues that affect or questions that Black Americans have as it relates to reparations. That shouldn't be a question presented to the vice president. I think it should. I think everything is fair game. I believe that if the abortion is a topic that's very sensitive on both sides, you have pro-life and pro-choice. I'm going to say that's the same with reparation. You're going to have pro-reparation. You're going to have those that are anti-reparation. But it should be a subject that should be on the debate stage. That's what America's about. So Kamala Harris should not run from that question if she's trying to gain the respect of Black voters. If that's an issue that's important to Black voters. She and the Democratic Party made the #1 issue to Black voters or to Black females to be abortion. They didn't question us and ask us, is abortion your #1 issue? That wasn't a question they asked us. They didn't send us a survey and say, what's your #1 issue? I can almost guarantee that abortion is not the #1 issue for Black Americans. I would say that the #1 issue for Black Americans will be the economy. I would say that the #2 issue for Black Americans would be the borders, security. I would say the #3 issue for Black Americans would be to eradicate the violence in our community, whether that violence is being brought on by law enforcement or whether that violence is being perpetrated by members of our very own community. I believe that would be #3. I believe that one of the things that would be high up on the scale would be reparations. There's a lot of Black Americans that believe that we should receive reparations for the atrocities that was bestowed on our ancestors and the generational generational what I want to call it for the last few since slavery, the generations that passed down, we were not able to pass down wealth. We were not able to bring ourselves out of the poverty that was pushed on us because of things like you had slavery. Post-slavery, you had Jim Crow. Post-Jim Crow, you had a lot of discrimination. You had some systematic racism. You had redlining. You had these issues, police brutality. You had unfair policing. So you had a lot of things that came after slavery that still crushed the Black community. The Democrats have not spoken to that. Okay, I know the Republicans have not spoken to that too, but the Republicans is not trying to market to the Black community in that same fashion. The Republicans are not telling us that if we don't vote for them, we're not Black. The Republicans are not telling Black men that we are afraid to vote for a candidate because of their gender or their race. So when someone market themselves that way, then they have to be held accountable to those things that they're marketing. They have to be held accountable to the position that they're taking. That's only fair game. And the Republicans have not marketed themselves that way. What Donald Trump has been doing, he has been making his campaign to be inclusive of all Americans. He's been running on a campaign of the economy, saying that he's going to lower energy for all Americans. He didn't say that he's going to lower energy costs for Black men, or Black Americans, or for LGBTQ community, or for the Jewish community, or for women. He said he's going to lower energy costs for all Americans. He said that he's going to place tariffs on foreign goods so it could benefit all Americans, not so it could benefit 400,000 first generation home buyers. Those are the things that are what Donald Trump is campaigning. On Kamala Harris side, she's making her campaign strictly for subsectors of Americans. She's campaigning directly to particular groups of Americans and not to the whole America. So we have to hold her accountable for who she's campaigning to, for what her campaign is about. That's what we have to do. So now, when she was on the interview with Charlemagne the God, she danced around the question about reparations. She tried to appeal to black voters by talking about the black church. She's tried to use jargon that we're familiar with the black church. God is good all the time, all the time. God is good. That's pandering. That's pandering. Those are things that she don't have to do if she's been authentic in her reach to black Americans. Black Americans want to know how we're going to feed our family. That's what black Americans want to know. Now, she also did a lot of pandering by using a quote that's very touchy to black Americans. Very touchy to black Americans is, we didn't get 40 acres and a mule. That's a post-slavery saying that black Americans are familiar with, and that's a cause for reparations. So don't use the 40 acres and the mule if you're not going to position yourself on reparation. You're not qualified to use that if you're not going to position yourself on that. The other thing that she did is, or that during this interview, there was no hard-hitting questions. Charlemagne the God, he hit, once again, those were softball questions. He pandered to her. He was kissing up to Kamala Harris. Like all the other journalists that had sat with Kamala Harris, they only kiss up to her. They don't ask her real questions. They don't ask her tough questions. Now, we see that the race have turned in Donald Trump's favor. And I'm going to provide you with some proof that shows you that Donald Trump is really in the lead at this moment, not just with the polls, but one of the things that the Democrats done, because they see that they're losing the respect of black voters. One of the things that they did that they thought was going to be their Hail Mary is they brought out former President Barack Obama. And that was a failed attempt. Barack Obama is not intact. He's not in touch with black Americans. He's not in touch with black Americans. He's a black man by skin tone. Barack Obama grew up with a white mother. His philosophy is going to be that of his mother, because that's who he grew up with. He did not grow up with a black American father. His father is a Kenyan, a black Kenyan man, with all due respect. So he don't know the struggles of a black American man, because he did not face that. And when I mean that, yeah, he's a black American man, granted, we can't take that away from him, but he don't have that black American father that sat down and disciplined him as our black fathers disciplined us, that talked to us as our black fathers talked to us. He didn't have that black mother that scolded us when we was doing wrong as our mothers scold us. They gave us that unconditional love that our black mothers gave us. They gave us that tough love that our black mothers gave us, because he didn't grow up with a black mother. So he don't know how to really connect with black men, because he don't have that black man experience. He had the black man experience of a black man growing up with a white mother, and a black man that has a distant African father that's continental African. So Barack Obama, he don't know how to speak to the black man in a way that he's in a respectful manner, and it shows. Another way that shows that the Democrats know that they're losing is they threw together in record time. Literally, it looked like they threw this plan together in less than 60 minutes. They threw together this so-called black men plan in less than 60 minutes. I went through the plan. I went through the black man plan, and it's horrible at best. When you look at this black man plan, the key word, you have to, the thing is, we have to read for ourselves. Reading is fundamental. We have to read for ourselves, read to get an understanding. We have to be very objective when we read. One of the things I've always preached, you have to read opposing viewpoints, whether it's what you agree with or not. You got to read both viewpoints. It's very important. When I read this Black Men agenda, the key thing that stuck out to me, words are very important, especially when you're talking about policies. Words are extremely important when you're talking about policies and legal documents. The word that stuck out to me the most, what Kamala Harris wanted to stick out to me, the beautiful things that you're going to give loans to 1 million loans to African Americans. You're going to focus on Black men health. You're going to focus on Black men investment in cryptocurrencies. That's what Kamala Harris wanted to stick out to us. But what stuck out to me the most, because I'm a reader, is the word "and others." And others. So her proposal to Black men, it states that this is what I'm going to do for Black men and others. Vice President Harris, who's this and others? Well, let me tell you. In one of the paragraphs or sentences, she said, when she said "and others," she had clearly mentioned others that has been disproportionately affected by laws or disproportionate groups. So what she mean by that is minorities. Okay, let's talk about minorities. When you talk about minorities, that encompasses actually, to be honest with you, minorities encompasses almost the majority. It encompasses a great group of people. So when you look at minorities, you got 14% of African Americans in this country. The number of Hispanics is almost double that number of Black Americans. So let's say you got about, I don't know the count for Hispanics. I haven't did that research, but the numbers are about double. So let's say you got about 28% of Hispanics. So 28% and 14%. So now you're at 42% of the population, right? So that's 42% of the population. Then you have the other group that's disenfranchised is the LGBTQ community. So though that's a small portion of the population, I believe that's about 3% of the population according to the numbers. But then you also have white women that are disenfranchised. So white women is going to make up the white population. If that's about 50, let's say about 58% of the population. If that's about 58% of the population, let's say that that's split down the middle. Let's say that white women is 50% and white men is 50%. Then therefore you're going to get about 28% is going to be white women. So now you got 28% plus 42%. That's going to give you 60. That's going to give you 70%. So minority America is 70% of America. 70% of America. Those that are excluded from minority America is white men. So now white men is going to be the minority in that sense outside of the minority America. But white men that identify as gay, identify as bisexual, that identify as queer, that identify as transgender, white men that fit any of the LGBTQ plus community identities, they fall into the minority bracket as well. So we're going to knock that number down from that 28% to about 24%, maybe to 22%. So minority, when Vice President Harris says that her plan is for Black men and others, and those others are being those that are disproportionately disfranchised by the American system, she means that this plan is for 74% of Americans. So Black men is still going to be at the very bottom of this plan. Black men is going to be at the very, very, very bottom of this plan when we do the mathematics, when we do the numbers. So that black men and others, that's where you lose us at. You clearly stated that you're not going to do anything that's going to benefit black people only. And you're standing 10 toes down on that. You said that your values have not changed. Clearly, we see that your values have not changed. Your values have not changed. You're trying to pull the wool over our eyes because you think that 100% of us are not going to read. We're not going to study this information for ourselves. There are educated voters that are black men, that are black Americans, black women. And those educated voters are the ones that are pulling away from the Democratic Party. Those voters that are tired of the wool being pulled over our eyes, we are the ones that are pulling away from the Democratic Party. So, Vice President Harris, when you say that you are going to make a policy for black men, you don't include the word "and others." That's not how you make policies for black men. Because when you do that, those black men that you're trying to attract, they are going to run away quickly. I'm not going to say I'm going to do something for my wife. I'm going to plan a very nice event for my wife and others. I'm going to tell my wife, oh, baby, I'm going to buy you something very beautiful. I'm going to do something very nice for you. And then I'm going to whisper, and others. That's what you did, Kamala. That's what you did. My wife is going to be offended. If I'm trying to treat my wife special and trying to tell her that I'm doing something particularly for her, and she find out I'm doing this for everyone else as well, but I told her it's for her, she's going to be offended. She's going to be offended, and rightfully so. Black men, we are offended. We are offended because you offended us. We're offended because Barack Obama offended us on your behalf. We're offended because the Democrat Party has been offending us for half a century. We're tired. Black men are walking away from the Democratic Party. There is a great exodus. And that great exodus is going to cost you, Vice President Harris, this election. Now, there are a few other things that one of the things that was the greatest, most offensive things about Vice President Harris's strategy or policy for black men. The most offensive, the singular most offensive, and others is greatly offensive. That's number two. But the number one offensive thing is Vice President Harris' total disrespect for black men. Do you think all black men smoke marijuana? Do you think all black men desire to get high all day? I've been on this earth for 50 years and I've never in my life in 50 years smoked marijuana. I've never smoked weed. You telling me that you're going to legalize marijuana for black men? You telling me you're going to legalize marijuana for black men? As if we need to be sitting around getting high all day. I know that that's a topic that many people, they love recreational marijuana, and all power be to them. But I think it's something that harms the black community. I think it's something that harms all communities. When I go to the gas stations to get gas in the car, I smell young black men, they reeking with marijuana. It's bad. It's not good. When my kids was going to school here in the U.S., my elementary kids was going to school, preschool and kindergarten. When I would drop my children off at school, other parents would drop their kids off at school. They little children in kindergarten would smell like marijuana. We don't need that in our community. That's not helping us. Kids that was going to preschool, their jackets, their clothes were smelling like marijuana because their parents were smoking weed with them in the car. Vice President Harris, that's not what we need. That's offensive. You think that that's all black men do? That's how the way you look at black men is black men as a group of people that just sit around and get high. That's how you look at black men. That's the respect that you have for black men. Are you serious? The respect you have for black men is we are nothing but potheads, nothing but weed heads. Come on, Vice President. Come on. Come on. Come on. Vice President, come on. Come on. Now, other proof that Vice President is doing worse than expected is she agreed to do an interview on Fox News. And we know Fox News is not liberal. We know that Fox News is going to rip her apart. And she also agreed to do an interview with Joe Rogan, who's going to rip her apart. That means that she's down. She knows that these polls are truthful because she's very down in the polls. And she knows these polls are truthful. Last but not least, the one I love the most is she came to her senses and she's hiding Tim Walz. She's hiding her vice president pick because she see that he's a dunce. She see that he is a knucklehead. She see that he has no value to the ticket and he's hurting the ticket. These are reasons. No man is looking at Tim Walz saying, "Oh man, he's just like us." No man is looking at him like. No man is looking at Tim Walz like that. No man is going to go to the polls and vote for the Harris Walz ticket because of Tim Walz. Not one. Not one. Now that leaves me with the big question of the day. The big question of the day, because I'm talking about the great black exodus. Why black Americans are turning away from Kamala Harris and the Democrats. Even a black American that's one of the highest figures in black America has not yet come out on the campaign trail for Kamala Harris. Why is that? Why haven't former First Lady Michelle Obama been on the stump for Kamala Harris? That's very telling. That's very, very telling. Now, 19 days away. What do the polls say? How is Kamala Harris looking in the polls? Right now, she's looking very poorly. Looking at the state polls from 270 to win.com, Trump is leading in 22 states and Harris is leading in 18 states. That's very, very bad. Nationally, she has a 2.5% lead, which is within the margin of error. We know what Trump did with Hillary Clinton when the polls was within the margin of error. We also know what happened with Joe Biden when they were in the margin of error. We know how his numbers came out. So now, Trump leads in 22 states. I'm going to go through the list of states that Trump lead in, and I'm going to make it really quickly. He leads in Utah, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Arizona, Georgia, Florida, Pennsylvania, Montana, Ohio, Iowa, North Dakota, South Carolina, Alaska, Indiana, Nebraska, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. The states that Harris leads in is Massachusetts, Wisconsin, California, Maryland, Minnesota, Virginia, North Hampshire, Nebraska, Delaware, New York, Colorado, New Mexico, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, Washington, Vermont, and Oregon. Now, one of the states I want to point out is Florida. Florida is a state that Trump lead in. A week ago, Trump only had a very slight lead of 0.6%. Today, his lead in Florida is 6%. That's really important to look at that number. He's really turning the state of Florida around. When it comes to Michigan, a week ago, he was at 0.1%. Today, he's at 0.5%. That's a 0.4 point increase, which is really important because Michigan is a battleground state. So everyone's looking at the state of Michigan. There are some states that are still really close. Now, there are some states where one candidate has a greater lead than the other, like Massachusetts. Harris has a 28.5% lead, Maryland 28.8% lead, and California she has a 25% lead. Now, now Vermont, she's really cleaned the house in Vermont. She has a 41% lead. On the Trump side, North Dakota, he's 27% lead. In Nebraska, 17% lead. Tennessee, he has a 21% lead. So there are some states where one candidate leads drastically greater than the other candidate. Now, when we look at the battleground states, this is where everyone is looking at. This is according to RealClearPolitics.com. In the battleground states, there are 7 battleground states. Trump is leading overall at 0.7% when it comes to the battleground states. Now, in the state of Arizona, Trump has 1.1% lead. Nevada, 0.5% lead. Wisconsin is the only battleground state that Harris has a lead in at 0.3%. In Michigan, Trump leads at 1%. Pennsylvania, 0.3%. North Carolina, he leads at 1.4%. And in Georgia, Trump has a lead of 0.7%. So right now, Donald Trump is he's leading in the polls. If this stays steady, or if he increases this gap over the next 19 days, we're going to have a Donald Trump White House. If anything changed within these next 19 days, we do still have a chance of having a Harris White House. The election has not been completed yet, so it can still go either way. It could still go to Harris. It could still go to Donald Trump. But what we're seeing is Donald Trump is currently leading. Harris, she's trying her best to jump back into the race. She's trying her best to gain traction. She see that a huge voting bloc that represented the Democratic Party for decades is fading. So she's really trying to garner votes from that particular voting bloc, and she's failing tremendously in that voting bloc. That voting bloc is the voting bloc I belong to, which is Black men. I'm one of those Black men that will not be voting for Vice President Harris. My decision is strictly because Vice President Harris does not speak to the needs of me as a Black man and to my family as a Black family. I'm concerned once again with the economy. I'm concerned with secure borders. Women rights issues. I do believe in women rights issues. Abortion is not my issue. It's not my wife's issue. We love having children. We love the children that we have. We support family. So abortion is not our issue. I do respect those who are pro-choice. I respect those that are pro-life. I'm non-biased when it comes to that. No other women rights issues I believe are important is IVF. I believe that birth control is important. I think that women's health is important. So I leave that subject alone. We support women's health. I'm glad that Donald Trump is attempted to address women's rights issues and women's health issues. So that's where I stand in this particular election. Leave comments below to let me know where you stand. What do you think about Vice President Harris' attempt to gain the Black male vote? What do you think about that phrase in her attempt where she said that these policies are for Black men and keywords and others? Who is this and others that she's talking about? Who is this disenfranchised group of people that she has been talking about in her attempt to attract Black male voters? Do you think that legalizing marijuana for recreational use is a huge concern for Black men? Do you think that that's an appropriate way to get the Black male vote? Leave your comments below. If you gain value from this video, please like it, please share, leave comments, and most importantly, please subscribe. It's very important to grow this channel. We need a voice for ourselves. We need a voice for those that is non-biased, that can look at both viewpoints, look at opposing viewpoints, and make a decision, analyze the situation from the middle. Whether I lean this way or whether you lean that way, I'm still going to respect whatever your viewpoint is, and that's what we need in America today. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time.